I'm with Don Lavender from the Camino Recovery Centre in Vélez, Malaga. Hi there.
Hi, welcome. Welcome,
Welcome.
Howard.
We're just going to have a quick walk around and see what's here, and it's an amazing site.
Yeah, it is. It's Mina and we were here 9 years ago in Spain, and we were on the other side of Marbella, and we were looking from Cadiz to Soto Grande to Marbella, and we were looking for 8 years or so.
Yeah.
And
Where are you from? The States, I guess.
from the New Orleans area. Yeah.
Okay, very nice.
And we were looking around that, and then it never occurred to us to come on the other side of Malaga.
Which is the nicer side,
It's
in my opinion.
well, we have found, and we stumbled on this place.
Now, what was it originally?
Well, it was a guy. He had built this for his family, an English guy, and it was I think, and it's a gorgeous place.
Yeah.
It's and like so many places that people build for their whole families, they use it for a while, and then they get older, and then their kids have their own kids, and they say, well, mom and dad, we're not interested anymore, and they let it out to a couple of different people long term. And then they had their youngest son. He said, look, why don't you take it and turn it into a business? And the younger son said, no, I'm not interested.
Not interested.
So, and there were three parties interested in purchasing it, and without getting into too much detail about the other parties, which I really shouldn't do,
No.
we said we'll use it to help people, and they said, well, that sounds like a worthwhile thing, so they chose us to sell it to.
Okay.
So
Now, did you have a recovery centre elsewhere?
we did. We were in San Pedro and in Estepona. We rented a couple of places, and constantly looking for the place to buy, and we found this place. So
Wow. And do you cover for all types of addictions?
we do. We cover all kinds of addictions, but even though we might be clinically, we're equipped to deal with sexual addiction per se. If we only have 10 beds, and so if we had 4 or 5 young people in that were trauma survivors or sexual abuse survivors, for example, which prompted them to get active in some of their addictions, we wouldn't take on board a sex addict.
No.
So it's everybody that's in right now are substance abuse,
Okay.
in recovery from substance abuse.
And what substances are we talking about? Glue or something like that?
Well, I mean, sometimes it's these what do they call these new kinds and types of drugs you can get off the internet.
Yeah.
These custom-made things.
Yes.
No, it's none of those. It's pretty basic alcohol, and some opiates and things
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah. I think alcohol abuse is common in the holiday areas by some of the, we see people with one too many occasionally.
Well, I've heard it said that people come to this area because booze is cheap. But then, the thing is, this is a holiday destination.
Now, you mentioned the horses. What about this?
Well, we do something, it's called equine assisted psychotherapy. And it's got a lot, it has a lot to do with relationship, both with self and others, and boundaries, and learning to work with the horses, but it's also around trauma. We use it to do trauma resolution as well, because there's some of the trauma resolution work we do is EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which was developed by Francine Shapiro. But we also do some.
Explain that a bit. What that entail?
Well, it is a top-down,
Oh, right.
where it's a limbic system process, and the limbic system is a midbrain, and it is the mammalian brain wrapped around the reptilian brain, which sits on top of the brain stem, and that's millions, hundreds of millions of years old. Whereas the neocortex, or the gray matter, or the think part of the brain, is only about 250,000 years old.
Only.
And trauma is housed in the midbrain or the limbic system. And what we do is it's a non-invasive, very simple process. The beauty of it is the client cannot do it wrong, and it works particularly after they leave the session and just allow themselves to think about stuff, feel about stuff. We encourage them, whatever thoughts come up, let them, whatever feelings surface, allow that, and process it in group.
Yeah.
And what it does is it takes the emotional charge, the emotional energy out of memories around abuse. It's not a matter, it doesn't make the trauma vanish or go away. It just lessens the emotional intensity of the trauma so that people can get on with their life.
Yeah.
Dogs and people have asked the kind of equine work. They say, could you use dogs? I say, well, no, because dogs are predators, just like humans are predators. Horses are prey, and they have a specific kind and type of connection with people that aren't going to kill them and eat them.
No.
And that
gentle animals.
They are, and that gentle connection, oftentimes, and there's studies being done on this, and people writing doctoral dissertations on it right now. A study and a connection of people who can have their autonomic nervous system rebooted simply by being next to a horse, because they possess that ability. Humans also possess the ability to reboot their autonomic nervous system, and they can do that through, yoga, meditation, mindfulness.
Yeah, I think most of us, perhaps we're aware that we could do that, but we don't really know how to do it.
Well, yeah, it's for a good example is you get in a minor fender bender, and you're shaken up, and
car crash, we say.
Car crash. There you go. And let's say there was a dog in the back seat. Well, the dog will get out of the car, and this is Levine's example, not mine. The guy that wrote "Waking the Tiger." The dog will step out, and the dog will just give it a shake. And what the dog has done is realigned and rebooted its autonomic nervous system.
Oh.
Well, the human will step out and go, I need a drink. The human doesn't say, I think I need an hour of meditation and yoga to realign myself. No. There was a guy, an English guy, a horse whisperer by the name of Rupert Isaacson. He wrote a book entitled Horse Boy, and his son was severely autistic, or still is maybe, but they discovered that while on horseback with Dad, the son could carry on a conversation with Dad, and the dad and the son could verbally solve maths problems and things that the parents had no idea he was capable of. And when he was not on horseback, he couldn't do it. When he was on horseback, he could. So it just sparked controversy and study, and all kind of stuff came of it. Yeah.
The people who come here, I presume you're selective. You have to be selective. And then where do you start? How do you open the first page?
Well, people, a lot, even though we have a website and everything, the majority of folks come to us are word of mouth. And when they contact us, we set up a time for an assessment. And we do an assessment on the phone. And we just, it takes anywhere from a half an hour to an hour. And we have to determine whether or not we are appropriate for them. In that eating disorders, for example, if we had somebody that was in an acute phase, needed acute care for an eating disorder, we wouldn't take them. Because that is, depending upon the level and the kind of type of eating disorder, it could be considered a psychiatric issue, it could be considered an addiction, but it's also the highest staff to client ratio in the business, and we don't have that.
No.
We don't have somebody to sit with them while they take meal, and all this other kind of. And if somebody's medically compromised, we're not going to take them. We always refer them on to other places.
Well, that's a great thing that you can do.
Yeah. Well, been in the biz long enough to know that there's other places that do other things, and they're better at some things than we are, and that they would be they would better serve somebody who's medically compromised, for example.
So what would you say are your specialities here?
Well, we work
The
with
things you're most successful with. Let's put it that way.
we're most successful with people that come to us for 90 days.
The duration.
Yeah, well, a lot of people go, I'll go to rehab for a month, 28 days. And there's absolutely no clinical rationale for 28 days. That is a managed care dictum. It's like, well, if you have health insurance, and health insurance is going to pay. They want to pay for the fewest days possible. They don't want to pay for 3 months.
No.
They want to pay for 21 days. So fix them. And so we work with substances, chemical addictions, drug addiction. We work well with depression, anxiety, relationship issues, trauma. A lot of people that come to us have been through a number of rehabs before.
Really?
And what's going to happen is, they get better, and rehabs will say, "Oh, we're so much better than that other place." The truth is, it's
a personal thing, isn't it?
Well,
it must be a sort of chemistry that's there that you just feel at home when you're.
Well, it can be,
No?
and that is important, but it's an accumulative effect. If I've been through treatment a couple times before,
right.
and I go to treatment a third time, I might.
So
do
you're
better.
saying that they're not in conflict, that they build. If you've been in different therapies, they build as you go forward.
Yeah, they do. They build. Then they just continue their work. But it's also a matter of folks that have been in the business for a while know that, and I say been in a while, I mean decades. They know that relapse, for example, one of the biggest contributors to relapse is stress.
Yes.
I was like, no kidding.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest contributors to stress is unaddressed, unresolved trauma. And so that's a big piece of what we do for the people that need to do trauma work, is we do that with them.
So if somebody comes to you and you don't want them, obviously, to go into a relapse, do you sort of look for that hidden trauma as a way of completing the treatment, as it were?
Yeah, we do. We ask them to investigate that and look at it and identify traumas that are getting in the way of them having the healthiest life that they want. And we have, it's tricky, it's if they knew what it was, they could sort it themselves just like that. So we help them investigate.
Have to sort of get it out slowly. And I suppose, I don't want to be sexist, but I suppose men are more difficult to open up.
It depends, but that's a good point. If you're working with men from Mediterranean folk, they're a hop, skip, and a jump away from their emotions.
Yes.
You work with a British gentleman.
British person. Yes.
It's
very different.
Tally ho, carry on.
Yes. No, that's why we live in Spain, I think, because the people around us are sensible, they're laughing and happy, and the family here is so strong. And, it's just fabulous when you go out. I've got some friends from Scotland who only just come out here, and we've been out a bit, a couple of restaurants, and, the kids are out at 10 o'clock in the prams and all the rest of things.
Yeah.
And Scotland, they call child protection, it's completely different.
Well, and if you believe all this stuff, it's these, Spain is, I think, number 4 in the world for men to lead healthy lives, long, healthy lives. Yeah. So they've got to be doing something right.
Which brings us on to the Mediterranean diets, which I suppose you offer here.
We do. It's we serve. The only thing I can think of that's processed that we serve is what might be some breads, but we don't do the horrible white bread stuff. It's little or no sugar. We let just the sweetness of the fruit. We do honey instead of. We don't do white processed sugar here. We don't do white bread.
Right.
We stay away from processed things as much as everything is locally sourced and seasonal.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Here in Spain, there's a time when cherries are in season. There's a time when asparagus is out, and of course there's local. it's, you know, on the other side of Marbella, for example, it's a lot of, you know, tourism and all that. I mean, there's a lot of tourism in Spain. This side of Malaga, it's agricultural, and there's just this abundance of fresh food.
Yes, and if you go Granada way, it's tropical as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's another thing. When people come to live on the Costa del Sol or any Costa del Sol, they come to retire. It's difficult for them to learn a language. Old dog can't, you know, learn new tricks. And my opinion is that they miss them so much if they don't integrate a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and just get some conversation with the local Spanish neighbours, or spend some time in the small shops. Don't go to the supermarkets, you know, and just because it's such a rich experience if you can get through that barrier. That
Well, you're absolutely right. You just do a little bit of effort, and folks appreciate it.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, on the I'm going to do geographic again. Marbella, everybody seems to speak English. Over here on this side of Malaga, fewer people speak English, so it's more of an invitation to engage. And it is. It's the Spanish are lovely.
and a need as well.
Yeah.
A need as well. Well, it's been a pleasure. A real pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for coming and chatting.
It'd be nice to keep in touch, because perhaps we can do a little series on each type of addiction and how people can get over it, if we can do that.
Oh, yeah. That'd be fantastic. I mean, one of the things that I'm going to say is when people come here and they have alcohol or drugs as a problem, we introduce them to 12-step fellowship programs of recovery, like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. Now, it's in their tradition. They're not going to promote themselves, and they don't, and rightly so. It's an ethical practice that's good. But it's one of the most fantastic things to engage people with, so that they have a network of support when they go home.
Yes.
Because you don't just do
No.
a month of treatment and then drop everything.
But you mentioned the 3 months. Everybody can't come here for 3 months, or can they?
Well, no, not everybody can, because
You know.
it costs money to go to rehab. But I can tell you, and to some people this means something, and to others it means nothing. In the higher end in the UK, the higher end places in the US, we're less than half of what they cost.
Yes.
But it's still money. It's still a lot of money.
Yeah.
And having been through treatment a couple of times myself, and the reason I went to treatment a second time is because the first time I went through treatment, I was the smartest person on the planet, and I knew everything.
So you thought.
So when things hit the fan, and had to go back to treatment a second time, I figured I better listen to what these people have to say. And even though it was costly, even though it cost a lot of money, the older I get and the longer I enjoy recovery from different areas, it's the cost of treatment has wound up costing me the price of a cup of tea per day.
Interesting. You said as long as I stay in recovery.
Yeah.
Are people always in recovery? Does the recovery period end, or are you always thinking you're still in recovery?
It's my thinking that I'm in recovery, or I need to stay in recovery. It's not like I am recovered.
No.
I think if I think that way, I'm in trouble. Recovery it's a process, and do we
You're
relapse?
sort of saying it's a continuous process then.
Sure, it is. And do we relapse? A lot of people relapse in their thinking. A lot of people relapse in their behavior.
Yes.
And if that happens, then the next day I get back on.
So can you sort of, if someone's been here for a while, loved it, gone away, perhaps like in England or whatever, have a bit of a relapse, can they sort of come here and say, hey, can I have just a little top up? Can you put me back on the right track?
Sure, absolutely.